Chapter 27, Escape Plan. Rachel kept looking back toward the hallway that twisted toward Pandorè's office. Her mother's stiffness made her abundantly aware that she was back in her presence, alone and under her thumb, just like in the days of her childhood. Ishani had her back to Rachel but eyed her critically from the embellished mirror in her office. Rachel desperately wanted to be back with Joel. Why did he have to go off investigating without her?
You must feel very grown up now, Rachel,
said her mother, raising her eyebrows. She sat in her vanity chair when she noticed a wrinkle beside her eye. She immediately began applying concealer.
What?
Rachel had been a million miles away. Her mother's stiff gray couch started sending shockwaves down her back. Rachel glanced at Ishani's hairline and saw a fresh scar on her head. Ishani immediately placed her dark hair back over the spot.
Really, you must stop daydreaming if you are going to play the role of becoming Joel's wife.
Ishani turned to face her with a sarcastic look.
Do you actually think this is going to work, marrying the first boy you get serious about?
Playing the role? Mother, I love him.
Rachel felt her old familiar anger igniting.
Do you?
Ishani placed her concealer sharply onto the table and marched toward Rachel.
How can you be so selfish?
Her antagonizing smile was inches from Rachel's face.
What do you mean?
Asked Rachel defensively, holding her ground.
It's not like I kept you in the dark about wanting to marry him.
Don't get smart with me. You both knew that your father and I were in the middle of a major breakthrough in our work, the biggest technological discoveries in the world. And now, on top of it all, we have to plan this wedding.
Ishani began to pace across the room.
This wedding? You know what? I don't know why I even bother.
Rachel threw her hands into the air.
I would much rather not have you there at all.
Rachel's face was fuming and her voice shook.
Have you ever stopped to consider Joel's family?
Ishani placed her hand on her hip defiantly.
They are trying to search for their kidnapped mother, and they have already lost their poor cousin Bill. This is not the time for a celebration. Why are you being so self-centered? Shame on you.
Rachel looked confused, and Ishani was pleased, thinking she had won the argument. Rachel's vision blurred in anger.
It was one of Lydia's last requests that...
She began to yell. Just then Ivan walked in.
Dad!
Rachel ran over and embraced him.
Whoa, what's all this yelling about?
He returned a warm, comforting hug.
What is going on here?
I was just explaining to our daughter how difficult it is to plan a wedding with everything that Joel's family is dealing with, not to mention how our work is right now. But she'll have none of it.
Rachel noted how Ishani pulled off the hurt, innocent tone and facial expression perfectly.
In fact, she just said that she does not even want me there.
Ivan looked into Rachel's hurt and angry face. He was used to playing the mediator, so he kept a very calm and collected tone.
Rachel, how could you hurt your mother like this? She and I work very hard to ensure you have a good future, and you know that I have given you and Joel my blessing. As long as we pick a good time for Joel's family, you will get the best wedding that money can buy.
Rachel and Ishani began to object, but
Dad...
Ivan held up his hand.
Let me make a suggestion. We will arrange to hire wedding planners, and all your stress will melt away. It will only take one phone call.
Both women relaxed, and Rachel shook her head yes.
Just a moment.
With that, Ivan made a quick call.
Yes,
Rachel
we
glared
need
at
a favor.
Ishani, who flashed a phony, innocent look in return. Ivan finished his call and put away his phone.
There, all set. All you and Joel need to do is pick the date and the location. Your dresses will arrive soon, so you can pick the one that is just right. That should give you something to look forward to.
Thank you, Dad.
Said Rachel. Her dad made her feel as if things would finally work out. He always had a way of making her feel better in the worst situations.
We've been through a lot lately, so this will be better for us all.
Said Ivan.
A wedding will be a nice time for us to have something positive for a change.
Yes, thank you, Ivan. Now, if you will both excuse me, I have some pressing matters to attend to.
Said Ishani. She ignored Ivan's nod and Rachel's glare as she left her office.
Dad,
Rachel embraced him.
you don't know how she is when you aren't around.
There, it's all right, Rachel. Your mother has been under a lot of stress recently.
He patted her head.
No, it's not that. She has been so different since I first came to live with you. Or maybe she was always this way, and I was just too little to realize it.
Rachel wiped away an angry tear.
You can't tell me that you haven't noticed.
Ivan looked away.
Yes, there is a difference in your mother. Her work has hardened her, but she is still your mother, Rachel.
Rachel thought to herself,
Adoptive mother.
but did not say that part aloud. She chose her words carefully.
What made you want to adopt me?
Why, we had always wanted a daughter, you know that. Ishani has never been able to have her own children. You will always be our little girl, the best thing that has ever happened to us.
He put his arm around her.
God has been very good to us.
Rachel smiled, and another thought came to her mind.
Dad, has Mom ever accepted God? You have taught me about Jesus and the Bible, but she never has. Every time I mention it now, she almost seems offended.
Ivan's face looked pained. His blue eyes flicked away the pools that were beginning to form.
I've tried to speak with her about God throughout the years, just last week, but only God can truly convince her. All we can do is pray.
Ivan paused briefly when a distant flash of a sinister memory entered his mind. Under a black sky, Dr. Crowning led a small crowd wearing dark cloaks. They hoisted up a young girl onto a pole. They surrounded her from below, chanting. Dr. Crowning approached the girl, exposed her neck, and slit her throat. Her head slumped over. A baby was crying off in the distance when a young Ivan desperately gripped and pulled on a door bolted shut from the other side. At the time, he had worried about Ishani's safety, but now he wondered about her whereabouts that night. He recently began to suspect that she was one of the hooded figures, but he could not prove it. Cut and bleeding, the young girl breathed her last. It was too late.
No!
Ivan's eyes widened in horror. Just then, an alarm began to sound, returning him to the present moment. Rachel looked up, startled.
Nothing to worry about. We go through this daily. Why don't you go on to Dr. Pandorè's office? He has a shelter in case of a real emergency, the one that leads to the tunnels. I'll come back and get you once everything is secure.
He patted her head and directed her down the hallway.
Hurry back.
Rachel watched Ivan as he waved and hurried in the other direction. Although the alarm soon halted, she still felt nervous about being alone in this place. She would rather face a minor explosion than take shelter in the tunnels. Rachel had no memory of being here when she was younger, but something in the air gave her a recognizable sense of anxiety. If she were to let herself dwell on it, the feeling was more of fright and alarm, but she did not let herself think about it that deeply. Plenty of workers were buzzing around, but they were in their own worlds and not very friendly. Her dad was the only welcoming face around. However, on her way down the hall, she saw the old vendor she and Joel had met before, who was selling t-shirts. He beckoned her to walk in his direction, but she looked at him menacingly.
What are you doing here? I'm trying to pin some sort of conspiracy on my parents.
Just as she was about to call for security, his staff glowed blinding white with the image of a cross that brought Rachel to her knees. Then, he vanished like a wisp of white smoke before her eyes. Rachel got up, wiping her eyes, and tried to adjust her vision. The place seemed darker than before.
Am I seeing things?
Rachel wondered if her stress was causing her to lose her mind. She remembered a disturbing time during her childhood when she had constant nightmares and sleepless nights. Rachel often dreamed that a paralyzing buzzing sound would lift her and carry her off as if floating in the air. She would wake up at various places in their big house. The disturbing memories made her hope it was not starting again, and she pushed away the thoughts and the vision of the vendor with the white staff.
Pandorè, Dad said to go to his office.
She attempted to focus as she continued down the hall.
Although strange, he is not too bad,
Rachel supposed, as she knocked on Pandorè's door. She was hoping to find Joel there, still questioning Pandorè, but there was no answer. Pandorè's dog was barking. She turned the knob, and Pandorè had left it unlocked. She stepped inside and greeted Ben, who was ecstatic to have company. Rachel picked him up and patted his head.
What does Ben need?
Rachel said in her baby talk. Ben wagged his tail so precipitously that he looked like a miniature helicopter. Rachel laughed at the thought of him becoming airborne. She looked around and handed him a doggy bone, which he eagerly chomped.
That is an awfully big bone for a little doggy like you,
she said. Ben dropped it with repugnance, and Rachel noticed that the bone was partially petrified.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, Ben.
She picked up the bone to examine it closer and saw that someone had drilled several small holes into this ancient femur bone. Was this a dinosaur bone from France? She saw that it could resemble something like the giant bones that Adam had discovered and quickly placed it back on the desk. She used some hand sanitizer and frantically wiped her hands. Then she noticed Pandora's microscope.
Let's see what old Pandorè is working on today.
She squinted to look through it, but nothing seemed to be under the lens. However, she peeked under the lens more closely and saw a small black stone, an onyx stone. She flicked on the light switch under the microscope and peered through again. It began to sparkle and glow slightly. She picked it up and examined it, wondering what Pandorè could be up to. Could it be the missing onyx stone that belonged to Joel's family? She could not know for sure, but she would have to show Joel. She snapped a picture of it with her phone, replaced it under the lens, and turned off the switch. She tried to call Joel, as she had already done several times, but there was no answer. There was very limited service on her phone this far below ground. Despite knowing that, she could not help but worry.
Where could they have gone?
She thought to herself. Rachel began to drift around Pandorè's office, wondering if there was anything else interesting she had missed before.
Pandorè needs to hire a maid,
she said as she reached over to pick up loose papers on the floor. She placed them neatly on his desk, but something else caught her eye. A small picture of a young Pandorè. Rachel smiled to see his youth. Beside him stood a young, familiar woman. Pandorè's arm was around her as if they were a couple.
Is that Mom? No, it's not Ishani.
Rachel studied her eyes. They were too kind to be Ishani's eyes, but she certainly looked a lot like her. Rachel noticed that the woman had one hand over her pregnant belly, so it definitely was not Ishani. Suddenly there was a loud crash, and Ben began to whine. The lights flickered off. When Ben leaped in her arms, Rachel accidentally dropped the picture. Ben started to shake violently. Her jewelry began to glow into an intense blue that filled the room. The black onyx stone under the lens also began to shine more brightly. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Rachel thought she saw a shadow pass by on the wall. It caused a cool wind to pass through. She remembered the shelter, but it was useless. Whatever she, Joel, and Pandorè had previously experienced in the tunnels below the hatch had made its way up here. It felt like something icy pressed against her cheek, although nothing was there. Rachel cried out, and Ben shrank back trembling. She remembered the old vendor's advice when she and Joel first met him.
If things get dark for you, remember Psalm 23,
he had said. Rachel began praying to God in Jesus' name and reciting the psalm from memory. Once she said,
Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
She began to grow less fearful. After a few seconds, the lights came back on, and her necklace dimmed. The onyx stone had turned coal black. Whatever it was went away as quickly as it came. Rachel got back up to gather herself.
Rachel?
It was her dad. He had barely walked through the door when Rachel ran into his arms.
What's the matter?
Didn't you hear it? Something was in this room. The darkness from before.
I didn't hear anything, sweetheart, but we have secured this area.
He looked around carefully to double-check, but did not see anything unusual.
I have to go back and finish securing the other sections, but I wanted to make sure that you are all right.
It was plain to Rachel that her dad had no idea what had happened in that room. Then Pandorè walked in.
I thought Pandorè might stay with you while we finish up.
Pandorè smiled and nodded.
Dad,
Rachel began. However, Dr. Crowning's appearance cut her off, his distorted face, and made her jump.
Are you ready, Ivan? We really must finish securing the other areas, however inconvenient it may be,
he said, eyeing Rachel critically.
Yes, Rachel, I must go, but I will be back soon. Make nice with Dr. Pandorè,
Rachel nodded sadly. Ivan raised her chin.
That's my girl.
Then he followed Dr. Crowning down the corridor. Rachel sat down in defeat next to Ben, who was still trembling. Pandorè awkwardly went to his mini-fridge.
Would you care for a refreshment?
Sure,
said Rachel.
You know, don't you? The shadow and the icy wind frequently show up here, right?
She nodded toward the onyx stone on his microscope. Pandorè was silent as he busied himself with the drinks. She wanted to ask him where he had obtained the onyx stone, but thought it would be best to keep things as calm as possible until she could get back to Joel.
How can you stand staying here?
As Pandorè walked over to hand her a soft drink, he spotted the photo of himself and the woman. The frame was lying on the floor. He paused and looked intently at it.
I'm sorry,
Said Rachel.
I was looking at it when the lights went out. I hope it didn't break the frame.
No, the frame is fine.
Said Pandorè as if he were a million miles away. He was looking at the woman in the photo, and when he lowered it, he could not help but see the similarities between her and Rachel.
Who is she? The woman in the photo beside you. It looks as if you were quite close.
Rachel noticed the hurt in Pandorè's eyes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry.
It's all right. Annika was my wife, the love of my life. I was just telling Joel about her, how I would do anything to be back with her.
He paused in thought and sat beside Rachel.
In fact, if she were alive today, she would be your aunt on your mother's side.
Ishani had a sister?
Rachel bent over to get a closer look.
She never even told me.
Yes, it is true. We attended school together, Ishani, Ivan, Annika, and me. Dr. Crowning and Dr. Ahaz had worked with our parents in the past, and they eventually taught us at the university as well.
As Pandorè was speaking, Rachel began to have a faint memory. It was her mother cradling her in her arms and singing to her. Her song had a sad sort of sound. Rachel was a toddler playing with the charms on her bracelet, and her mother took it off, allowing her to have it. The charms sparkled in the light as her mother continued to sing. Pandorè noticed that Rachel looked down at her wrist and fidgeted with her bracelet. Just then, Dr. Crowning knocked at the door.
Dr. Pandorè, we require your immediate assistance.
He barged into the door, not expecting to see Rachel still there. She straightened, and Pandorè concealed the photo before Dr. Crowning could see.
Rachel, would you please give us a moment?
Pandorè nodded that it was okay, and Rachel stepped outside the office. Dr. Crowning spoke in a low voice.
These meetings with Joel and Rachel are getting quite inconvenient, Dr. Pandorè. I suggest that you focus on your work. You know we are on the verge of a breakthrough that could lead us back to the place you discovered, do you not?
Yes, sir, I was just about to finish my work on the lab materials.
Yes, you do that. I expect to meet you in the mirror lab shortly.
Certainly, Doctor.
With that, Dr. Crowning made his exit. Rachel hid around the corner, pretending to have left. She distrustfully watched Dr. Crowning march back down the hallway. Then she slipped back inside Pandorè's office, closing the door.
Why do you allow him to treat you like that? As if he's superior to you.
Rachel noticed a fresh wound on Pandorè's forehead, and he winced when she tried to examine it.
Rachel, there are many dangers here that you do not know.
He hesitated.
I fear for your safety.
Rachel was confused when she felt a strange connection to Pandorè's concern.
I'll be careful.
Just then, she looked down at the table and noticed something underneath a few papers. She brushed them aside and saw that it was Joel's camera. She held it toward Pandorè.
I need to find Joel. Do you know where he went?
He made it through the first level of the tunnels. That's the good news.
Rachel looked at him questioningly.
What do you mean?
Follow me for a moment, if you please.
Pandorè walked over to open the hidden hatch that led to the tunnels, and Rachel became distressed.
If you think...
Rachel stood and began backing away. Pandorè cut her off, whispering.
Just trust me, please, if you want to know about Joel.
He held out his hand to help her down the ladder. Something in his voice made Rachel obey. She placed Joel's camera around her neck and grasped Pandorè's hand while slowly stepping down the hatch into the tunnels. Pandorè followed her, closing the hatch behind him. He turned on a flashlight. No ice. No smell of sulfur. They were safe for now.
Prism has upgraded their surveillance, but this is the only place where they cannot hear us. Interference from the other dimension makes this area impossible to track.
Rachel knew that Pandorè had been holding back all the details about this place. However, his intensity caused her not to interrupt. She listened intently.
Now, about Joel. I know he is trying to find his mother, but we must not reveal his location. Also, if Dr. Crowning has her, she won't be here.
Do you know something about her? Where is she?
Rachel grabbed his shoulder. Pandorè gently clasped Rachel's hand and held both of her hands in his for a moment.
Nothing for certain. However, these people are looking for Joel. Dangerous people that Dr. Crowning has allowed to reside among the scientists here. They call themselves the AI, once a highly secret organization, but they are now slowly choosing to reveal themselves to the public.
Rachel's eyes widened, realizing that these people had actually planted the conspiracy theories Davy had looked into on purpose. Pandorè continued.
Once they find Joel, at the very least, he will be escorted off the premises. They will not let him come back here. However, they likely have other plans for him.
What?
Rachel tried to control herself. She felt a sharp separation from Joel and wanted nothing more than to find him and get out of there.
Why didn't you say something before?
I had to be sure that it was safe. They have threatened what little family I have left, and Joel's family. Now, the best thing we can do is listen carefully from a distance. Be Joel's eyes and ears until we get you out of here safely.
Rachel's mind was spinning. Just how much danger was she in? Pandorè was coming out of his social anxiety enough to show genuine concern for her.
Are my parents part of all this?
You know that your father would never allow that.
Pandorè turned his face, avoiding the subject.
But what about my mother?
Pandorè was silent, which was enough to answer her question. Rachel had to devise a safe plan to get back to Joel. She thought for a moment.
It will be easy,
She said with confidence.
I will have my dad plan for us to have a dinner party for our engagement. Somewhere away from here. You are invited as well, Pandorè. You mustn't stay here any longer.
Perhaps you're right.
He said distantly.
Of course I'm right. There is no sense in you living like this either, Pandorè. You can make a new life for yourself, far away from here.
Pandorè looked down, thinking that there would be no true escape.
Listen, we can do this. They are probably almost finished securing the area now. I'll go and find my dad, then I'll come back to you.
Pandorè nodded his head in agreement. His legs were shaking, but Rachel's bravery gave him a flicker of hope. He should have escaped years ago. Any real chance he once had of seeing his wife again was long gone. They were using Pandorè for his knowledge to achieve their own purposes, and he knew it. After that, they would have no use for him. They returned up the steps through the hatch and into Pandorè's office. Rachel glanced back with a determined look at Pandorè. He gave her a nod. She stepped into the hallway, and Pandorè watched her as she cautiously made her way down the corridor. Suddenly, a bright light shone in his office, the onyx stone. Then, Pandorè hurried back and opened a secret compartment underneath his desk. He pulled out an old, tarnished case. It was decorated with a discolored mandrake embedded in the tarnished silver lid with the name Reuben inscribed in Hebrew. He opened it and lifted out his old pocket watch with several spinning gears that his ancestors had handed down for countless generations. Another large stone shone brightly on its back, a sardius stone his grandfather had embedded. Golden rays shot forth from it, at last confirming Pandorè's suspicions. It glowed just like Joel's family's onyx stone when danger was near. It had been years since he had examined the secret watch, Pandorè's only link to what was left of his family and his ancient Hebrew ancestors. Like Joel and Rachel, he had inherited this rare jewel from his ancestors, making him Dr. Crowning's direct target. Dr. Crowning's plan was coming to fruition, and time was running out.